Hello and welcome. My name is Taka Hines and I will be presenting to you a short presentation on the terms portrait and landscape. I will describe what each term means and discuss how each are used. I'll begin by establishing that portrait and landscape are terms used in determining how visuals are presented. Portrait and landscape are the two most common orientations or modes for viewing words or images. The modes can be used to describe printed pages as well as digital images and words. Have traditionally been used in describing how material is presented in a book or printed out on paper. With the emergence of computers, tablets, and smartphones, it now is being used to determine the display format for these newer forms of media. Although most often heard in reference to the orientation of printed pages or documents, portrait and landscape is equally important in photographs and computer screens. We'll discuss that a little shortly. First, let's define each term. The term portrait refers to a visual presentation where the height of an image is greater than the width of the image. Height longer than width. Simple enough, right? Well, landscape is when the width of an image is longer than the height of the image. It's just, as I just mentioned, landscape and portrait are equally important in different types of formats. In printed documents, we know that portrait is standard printing and landscape is as well, just not used as often. Most printers print in portrait mode by default, which means the page is printed vertically from top to bottom. However, landscape is used if the information or image would be better displayed in print form, wider than taller. Due to the format of most printed books, portrait is most considerably changing. But computer screens, tablets, and cell phones are becoming the dominant image providers of pictures, documents, and books. On desktop and laptop computer screens, the norm is landscape, only due to the screen being traditionally wider than tall. On cell phones and tablets, portrait was the norm before these devices began to be made with landscape capabilities so that the owner can Designers now have to decide the best way to present the digital media they want to display, even if the screen shapes remain the same. To please consumers, they have to question whether electronic editions of publications should adhere to traditional portrait orientation of printed pages or should conform to the common landscape orientation of television screens and computer monitors. Lastly, in photography is when portrait and landscape decisions often come into play. Certain images need to be captured in specifically one way or the other in order to be effective. In photography, landscape orientation is often used for images that need to be wider than a portrait page so that the subject of the visual is the focal point. In landscape photographs are taken, the horizontal photo appeals more natural to the human eye, which comprehends wider easier than higher. Portrait mode is useful for taking pictures of tall objects that flow from bottom to top. In reference to portrait versus landscape, the competition is only in deciding which orientation will yield the best visual effect for paper or digital media. No one orientation is a winner over the other. The terms are interesting because the orientation displayed is a major difference between printed media and digital media. Paper-based documents are predominantly portrait-oriented, which has led to digital mediums allowing portrait orientations on their displays to accommodate for the bias some have for this traditional format. In summary, portrait and landscape are the two most common orientations or modes for viewing words or images. Portrait orientation is taller than it is wide and has been traditional for letters, memos, and for text documents. Landscape orientation, where the width of the page is greater than the height, is often used for images that need to be wider than a portrait page. This has been a presentation on portrait versus landscape. Thank you so much for attending.